we built like 5-foot shark mouths, and kids had to launch stuffed fish into the shark mouths from the
That's
trebuchet.
fun. That's pretty fun.
That's sweet.
Also, a good way to cause church hurt. Not the kind, not
Nice
the kind of
segue.
church hurt we're talking about now. Just like the misfire catapult kind of church hurt. Hey, listeners, thanks for checking out another episode of the Church Chat podcast. We're so pumped that you are on here. This is the podcast where we have conversations about ministry that you wish you were having, and we are so excited about this episode's sponsor, Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, TEDS. Get equipped for ministry. My name is Josh, and I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Emily, and today's guest is our first repeater here on Church Chat, which we're really excited about. Matt Saxinger, lead pastor of Susquehanna Valley Church. Welcome.
It's good to have you, man. And Emily, you nailed it. Because last
so
time
excited.
it took you,
It was a bust.
you couldn't
but
say Susquehanna to save your life.
No, I'm not born and bred Pennsylvania person.
No, it doesn't matter how much education or how much of a wordsmith you are, you fumbled that one.
Yep, I did.
She got it right this time.
Touchdown this time.
Touchdown, home run, first pitch, man. Lead off home run. We loved having Matt on here before. It was a great conversation, and it got tons of views. And we kind of talked about, shoot, am I supposed to even wander into this? Well, you could just go back and listen.
Just go listen. Yeah.
Just go listen.
Yeah, just go listen.
If you want. Oh, man. But we're excited to have you back, Matt. Man, it's great conversations. I love how real you are and transparent and how intentional you are. So pumped to have you on here talking about church hurt.
Yes, but before we jump into that weighty topic, we're going to do another round of Two Truths and a Lie.
I jumped.
And I was going to go, I know, and I was going to go back and see who won. I'm assuming it was me, his last round. And I hope you thought of three more good.
I got him. I don't
facts about
remember who
yourself.
won.
I'm pretty sure it was me.
I don't know. I feel like that was one of my wins. But you cheat every time, so
Yeah.
wait.
Hands up.
The listeners
I'm not
can't
looking on
see
my
it,
phone.
but just wait for the top of that phone to creep onto the Zoom phone.
All right. So two truths and a lie. I prayed at a congressional meeting. I built a trebuchet for a church event. And I've owned a peregrine falcon for hunting purposes.
Okay.
Repeat the second one.
I built a trebuchet, which is it's like a French catapult that's like super involved for a church event.
Oh man, I think I know. Yeah, I feel confident, but I don't want to say anything because I don't want to help Emily.
So you're making
No, I
Emily
don't
go
need
first.
help.
You don't need help because you're searching it on Google right now.
No,
Hey,
hands up. I got nothing.
Matt's tricky too, if I remember correctly. Like there's nuance to his lies. He's a very good liar.
It's not a good compliment.
No, it's not. This lead pastor is awesome at lying. Just gets us all the time. I'm ready to go whenever you are. It looks like your
I
brain
know.
is your brain cramping?
It is a little bit. Well, okay, here's my thinking is that I could totally see Matt owning a falcon and I could totally see him building a trebuchet. So, but then the congressional meeting,
Ooh.
it's the outlier, but usually the outliers are true.
How do you know?
And I know he hunts, but the falcon is so odd. And that's like do you have to have like a special permit to have a falcon? Oh man. And I really hate to lose.
Oh, I'll tell you what.
Okay.
I'm going with the falcon as a lie.
Dang it. I was also going to go with the
That's
falcon.
why I swooped in right there. You get
Okay.
that pun?
Well, we're going to go the same
Oh,
one.
the falcon
We're going to go the
swooped.
same.
Oh, copycat.
Yes, I'm sorry. But yes, yeah, falcon.
I mean, that was well done on the pun and on the correct answer. It is the lie. I've always wanted a falcon, and I've been jealous of those who had them, but it just seems like a little too much work.
I feel like we've talked about this before, which is why I got an easy win this time.
I feel like I have not talked with you about this, but maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I also want to hear about this trebuchet. Why did you
Yeah.
build this?
So we do,
And what church event?
So we do trunk or treat with a local elementary school. They host us to do our event there. We do it for them. And so we kind of like, as a staff in church, try to one up everybody every year. And so it got super elaborate where we built like 5-foot shark mouths, and kids had to launch stuffed fish into the shark mouths from the tree.
That's fun. That's pretty fun.
That's sweet.
Also, a good way to cause church hurt. Not the kind,
Nice
the kind of
segue.
church hurt we're talking about now. Just like the misfire catapult kind of church hurt.
Yeah, fortunately, we didn't have any of those. That would have been bad.
Yeah. I feel like trunk or treat is one of those old school events that we should bring back. I loved trunk or treat. I have great memories of trunk or treat when I was little. We had a van and we did the tomb.
You drive around and drive around
like
and go,
one side-
"Hey kids, you want some candy?"
No, it was at church. We were all
That doesn't mean
trunking and treating
anything.
there. I know, but it was like, I just have sweet memories. And my kids' school also does a trunk or treat, and it's really fun. So kudos. I really love
Emily misses the days of driving around. My
trying
van.
to get people to
Giving
eat candy
candy to
from my van. Oh, man. No.
I think we still might do one. This is terrible. And for all my people listening, forgive me. I don't want to commit hard to the answer, but we've done one. Our kids programming has done one in the past. I'm not sure if they're still currently doing one or not, but trunk or treat, man. It's all about bags and bags of candy.
It
just
works
grunge
for
loads.
our context with this school. We've got, it's like 1,000+ people we would never interact with as a church any other way. So yeah, it's a little silly, a little old school, but gets it across.
Yeah, I love it.
So Emily, you could bring your van and you could show up to our trunk or treat.
Yep, and have people walk through Jesus's tomb with his little bedclothes on the thing. And man, it was simple but effective. I loved it.
Yeah. You could go way old school and remember back in like the back in the days, people would rent school buses and then somehow turn Jesus Rapture movie into a horror show.
We don't do that version.
No, this is a sweet trunk or treat.
So cue all the emails about how churches shouldn't be participating in anything Halloween.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. Oops. We just like to be controversial in this podcast. Not really.
Oh man.
But we are going to talk about a touchy topic.
Yes.
For church hurt, but hopefully taking a good angle of how to prevent church hurt and making churches safe spaces. But in thinking about talking to you, Matt, again, and I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, so hopefully
Surprise.
you have an answer. Yeah. But I feel like you're the type of leader who is not afraid of failure, in the sense that you are willing to try new things and do trunk or treat with a local school or whatever. I feel like you've always had a great attitude about things that we've tried here at the district that may be new or different. Are you adverse to change? Like, you just seem like a guy that is okay with trying new things and moving on if they don't work. And I feel like not everybody has that tolerance. I'm not somebody that has that high of a tolerance for things that might fail.
No, we're big on a try culture, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, the only thing that really there is to fear there is my ego and taking a hit, or our staff ego and taking a hit for something not working well. But you just kind of, if it doesn't work, you learn from it and you figure out why it didn't work and try to repackage and come at it from a different angle. But you've got to be willing to try in our culture to figure out creative ways to connect with people. Because there's a lot of people in our world who would never set foot in the church, and they have their opinion of what a church is for some of the reasons we're going to talk about today. But until I guess at the end of the day, I'm just not okay with people going to hell because we didn't try to do what we could to reach them. So let's just be creative. And if it doesn't work, then we'll be creative a different way.
I love the language of experimenting in church world and just try, like that try culture you said. And the failure piece is wonderful. You learn so much from those things. We just talk about how fail at something better. So like fail up. I don't want to fail at the same thing twice. We're going to fail and then we're going to grow and get better and then fail at something, at the next level and then grow and learn from it, get better. And I think it's an important part of what we do. And also I think that the worst mistakes come, maybe even the most hurt comes from fear, when we're afraid of failure And we're afraid of being transparent about that. And we're afraid of showing our humanity. And we have to act like we have it all together and we're right. And, it should have worked and it's somebody else's fault. And like, that's unhealthy. And so I love that. I love that idea of the tri-culture and just keep failing upward.
Yeah. And I feel like we need to parse it out a little bit too, because if you fail because of lack of intentionality, lack of integrity, lack of planning, like that's different than trying and putting your best into it and failing. Like
Right.
that's a different category. But yeah, as far as like we did everything we thought we could do and we tried it and it didn't work, like then yeah, it's just you learned what wasn't effective, and you go a different direction.
So do you feel like that's something you had to train into your staff? Because I could see that, to make that work, you need a staff that is both willing to be creative, and innovative, but you also need a very resilient staff who is okay with their own sacred cows being killed and whatnot, and also like just seeing things not work. I feel like that might over and over be discouraging.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully you don't have 50 failures before you have success.
That's true.
But no,
Yeah.
it's something you not only coach into your staff, but into your key leaders as well. I mean, one of the first things we did like when I got here was we did a house party at the church, a block party at the church, and just we were all behind it, and it didn't really work. We had like one family from the community show up, and we just realized, all right, we're not in. I mean, it was ridiculous. We spent over $1,000 on this event. We advertised like crazy, had all our key volunteers. We had like 40 volunteers here, and then we've got one family from the community. And you talk about like, man, trying not to seem desperate at that point. But so, all right. So it's like, well,
that's so awkward.
Oh,
so
yeah.
awkward. One
Yeah.
family, the rest are like,
We're
and then as
helping
that poor family starts to realize as they're talking, wait, everybody works here.
Yeah. They're all wearing the same T-shirt, and I'm not.
This is
So yeah, I mean,
man.
you go from that to a trunk or treat where it's like, literally 1,200 people are there, and they're all collecting information from your church and asking questions, and so. But you gotta try, and maybe that model would work for a different church. It doesn't work for ours.
Love it. You can't take yourself too seriously either. like you can't come out of the gate in the business that we're in thinking that you have all the answers and that you understand people completely and that you're the God's gift to the church in the area. Like that's not healthy, and you got to be able to laugh sometimes at those things and the failures and the mistakes, and I think it's a huge relief to everybody when you're the top guy in your organization or top leader in your ministry, even if it's not the head of a church, but like wherever, and you go, yeah, I messed that one up, and you can laugh about it a little bit and be like, those poor people, and what did I put them through, and why did you guys let me eat all that cake before making this decision? Like there's something that kind of like takes the pressure off everybody else, and you know what, go out and try some stuff, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and you're not going to get beat up for it.
Yeah, 100%. And it's kind of having that attitude of like, this isn't all about me and my image and what people think about me. It's about the mission to reach people. What worked before might not work again. We might do a trunk or treat and maybe 50 people show up, and it's like, okay, well, it's time for us to do something different, or we did something ineffective.
Yeah. So we're talking about church hurt today. That's the main focus for this one. If you're on social media at all, like this is a trending topic. Sometimes I feel like, and some of that is deserved and really important for people to talk through and to process. And I think it's a way for us to learn and be better and healthier and all those things. But it's definitely out there. And I know you've run into it a lot too in your church and the new membership class that you run. You have a unique way, and we may get into that, what you do there a little bit later. But before we get to that, why do you think now, it's always existed, why do you think now this is such an important topic?
Yeah, I think it's huge. And I think it's kind of our unique culture and climate right now as a people is just it's volatile. But I think people are just dying to find something they can trust in
Yeah.
life, and so much of life is fake. And I think people are tired of being skeptical of everybody on the news, everybody on social media. I think schools are not safe, and people just want safety, they want reliability, and the more that the rest of the world just feels volatile, the more people just want something they can rely on. I feel like they want a refuge, and so it's like great. They want the church to be that refuge, but this is when it's a double-edged sword, because if the church is the last refuge for trust and safety, and then there's a hurt at church, there's a hurt in the safe room. It stings so much more, and your world just
Mm.
has to collapse because you thought this was the one place that you could go to and be safe and not be hurt.
Hmm.
I think we can all agree that we live in a broken world. We
Mm.
are, like sinful people. And I feel like church hurt on both sides, like staff getting hurt, but also, or our congregation getting hurt in some way, boils down to the fact that relationships are messy because it's you're dealing with people.
Mm.
Do you think there's a world in which this doesn't happen?
Yeah, I think there's a world where it doesn't have to happen as much as it does, and when it does happen, it happens in a different way.
Mm.
So we fight hard for a healthy church where we don't hurt people. Now, people like, so disclaimer right up front, like sometimes church hurt is unavoidable. Like sometimes you as a staff, you as a lead person can do everything right, and people are still going to walk away and they're going to be hurt. And that's not on you. Like if you've got somebody who can't sing and they're convinced that they should be, leading worship, and you have the most loving and honest and gentle conversation to say, like, you just can't sing, they're going to leave, and they're still going to be hurt, but you didn't do anything wrong. So sometimes it's just unavoidable. But one of the things that we try and do is try to avoid as much of it as possible by creating a healthy culture. One of our key culture statements that we press home on a regular basis is that we're a source of grace, not drama. And when we say that, we mean, like Christians who've got the Spirit of God in them have been such recipients of grace that we don't need to lead these lives that have like drama and toxicity all around us on a relational level. I mean, there's so much teaching in the New Testament about how we're to behave relationally in the church that it's like we gotta fight for this. But when we say like we're a source of grace, not drama, then people tend to think, oh well, I should just never do anything that could potentially make anybody upset. And that's not the reality either. We talk about it as if, it's not that we're perfect. It just means we handle our imperfections in grace-centered ways. That if I mess up or if I'm bothered or if I'm hurt, I handle it in a grace-centered way, not in a self-centered, sinful way, because then we've just got hurt over and over again.
Yeah, I think I really like that nuance because I think it's important to realize that it's kind of like a marriage in the realm of like when you do premarital counseling or whatever, we're not trying to teach these couples to be perfect people. We're trying to equip them with ways to communicate better, or ways to engage in conflict better, because those things inevitably happen. And I just feel like talking about church hurt, like there's no way that the body of Christ is going to be perfect on this side of heaven. And when the pendulum has swung so hard on the church being like not a safe space and full of terrible people, it's just sometimes it's like, well, there's no way for us to be perfect. Like you're always going to run into people who are like, well, you didn't handle this correctly or whatever. It almost feels like equipping people to handle conflict is the best tack.
That's something we're going to come back to a number of times, I'm sure, in this conversation. And I love your analogy of, pre-marriage counseling, because like the goal in pre-marriage counseling isn't to create a couple that just doesn't acknowledge or just overlooks all their issues and doesn't talk about them. You're going to have them. You're going to argue, or you're going to have differences of opinion. The key is that conflict management piece of how do we resolve this in a healthy way. If we just sit on it for 20 years and we sit on everything for 20 years and we never address it, you're very far from a healthy marriage. And the same would be true of the church. If you just ignore all your issues, it's gonna fester and come out somewhere.
Yeah, and it is a broken world, and we're three people here on this podcast that have been hurt by churches. we're all here, and we, was it St. Augustine? You probably get emails for this. Said the church is a whore, but she is my mother. I mean, going all the way back then, like there's a guy who's saying like, hey man, we've made mistakes and it caused hurt, but this is still extremely important to us, and had such great value and is important to God too. Emily, you might have to cut that one, but like, so we have, we have church hurt. My issue with that whole conversation, like, well, isn't it inevitable? Yeah, it is, but that can't be an excuse. Like, and I feel like that, you see, responses on social media and stuff to people's church hurt videos, just saying, well, it's, broken church full of broken people. But that's not like something that we need to announce. We just need to be better. And I feel like sometimes people throw their hands up in the air and say, well, we can't, it's people are broken and our conversations go sideways and people get hurt. So, it just is what it is. But that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be better. It is supposed to be a safe place. Uncomfortable place sometimes, but a safe place. A place that pushes us, but a safe place. I get concerned when we feel like we have to, not concerned. I just don't want that to be the first response to church hurt, right? Is, oh, well, that happens.
Yeah. And I don't think that is the response. I think that's the acknowledgement that shows that we've got to create a better path here. Like there's got to be intentionality on our part. If every church out there is prone to people being hurt, especially like as now people have a voice where they can voice that church hurt in a way where they've got a platform to be able to say, I mean, 40 years ago, if somebody was hurt, maybe that affected their family and the church, but it didn't affect anybody else. Now it's like, it's, this almost this group that can find each other and grow that on a social media platform. But yeah, so to me, it looks like we all acknowledge the problem. It's been there since the beginning. I mean, you read Corinthians and it's all over Corinthians. The challenge is, what do we do to minimize it and to make it as healthy as possible? It's never something you're going to entirely like say, all right, today we've got a healthy church. That's great. Now I get to enjoy 30 years of ministry with a healthy church. It just doesn't work like that. I've got to recognize part of me being a senior pastor is saying, for as long as God has me in this role, I need to be diligent for the church to be as safe as a place as possible.
And maybe we should go back and define what we're talking about as church hurt, because I think clarity here would be helpful. Because in my mind, I'm thinking like, maybe it's just like the devil's advocate. I mean, it's just thinking like, I mean, we have people leave the church over dumb stuff, and they would probably categorize that as church hurt. And we're giving them a platform on social media to be like, don't go to this church because they, play their music too loud. And the pastor didn't do anything when I asked him to do something, So how would you define the church hurt that we're really talking about?
Yeah. So the big thing that we've seen over and over again in our church, and, Josh mentioned our welcome class. I guess I can get into that because I think this will, give some fodder for why this definition I think would make sense. But part of what we try to do in a welcome class is not just like get to know people and tell them about us, but we're beginning our culture at that point. Our culture shaping is starting at that very beginning level. And we're talking about that. We're a source of grace, not drama. But we're talking about our behavior, like what is common, typical behavior of somebody who attends Susquehanna Valley Church, that this is the norm of our behavior. And one of those is, that we're going to operate in healthy ways. And we're not going to be a church that talks about politics. We're not going to be a church that, tries to keep things secret and hide things behind closed doors. And at that point, what has happened in every welcome class since we've done that is people have just felt free to kind of speak up on their own and share some of their church hurt experiences. And I mean, they run the gamut of everything from like, I volunteered there to, I trusted somebody and they spoke about me behind my back at a leadership level. Like there's all sorts of answers. At the end of the day, it all seems to boil down to one central thing, which is I trusted and that trust was broken. Like there's
That's
something there
good.
where they expected the church to be something that they invested on their end, trust, which, we can go back to the marriage analogy. When there's a trust breakdown, that's always the most significant thing to overcome in the health of that marriage. And it's the same thing in the life of the church. And so really the conversation is kind of shaped around what do we do to maintain trust, throughout difficulty, throughout failure, and even throughout seasons of transition and change, where people don't feel like they've been blindsided or trust has been broken.
That's so good. I love that trust thing in there. It's when, and when trust is broken, somebody has been wounded, not superficially, but there's something that trust should have been there and something broke. Church hurt is not, and this is how I think of this, it is not when your preferences aren't catered to or your demands aren't indulged. Listen, I've had people claim church hurt because their demands weren't indulged. It didn't matter
Right.
how ridiculous their demands were. I've had videos posted of people ranting about because their demand for me to, I don't know, strong arm somebody to do what they wanted or to fix a relationship weren't met, or their preferences on how we do church or the philosophy in which we do ministry, we didn't cater to their preference. That's not church hurt. You're in the wrong church. Your expectation for the senior pastor is maybe different than what the senior pastor can do in that church. Maybe you're going to a large church and you have that small church. You want a pastor that can be there for you all the time, and the head guy is the only one that counts. Well, you're just in the wrong church. The music's
Right.
too loud. You don't like the lighting. You don't like the songs. You don't like the preaching. That's not church hurt. You're just in the wrong church. You want more traditional, that's not. So church hurt is when that trust is broken and when there has been a wound on a personal or spiritual level that's not just some superficial, I don't like this person kind of thing. And the way you say that with trust, I think really captures that.
Yeah. And I think it's key for us to understand that as leaders, because they almost never can voice that specific threat. There's always some other hurt, which is true and it hurt, but underneath that is the trust piece that is part of their healing, and part of us creating a church where we can move forward and doing everything on our end, to your point of if it's a preference or, they're just in the wrong church, we can do everything on our end to be a church that people do feel safe to trust and minimize places where that trust is broken. I mean, this like you mentioned, we've all had this. For me, even as a 10-year-old kid, I remember our family leaving a church that I really enjoyed going to. And at 10 years old, if somebody asked me why did you guys leave the church? And my answer was, it's just too political. At 10, I had no idea what that meant, but that's what came out of my mouth. And really what I was trying to voice was we trusted the church to be something and it wasn't. And it was so far from that we had to leave.
Yeah. And also, even though I'm talking about how preferences or your individual demands aren't being catered to, still, though, as leadership, our responsibility is still to handle those as graciously and as lovingly as we can. So it's not an excuse. Just because that's not church hurt doesn't mean I get to go hey, get out. This isn't the church for you, or I'm the wrong pastor. You don't like the music, too bad. That's not an excuse to go, well, that's not real church hurt, so I'm not going to be caring and loving about it. We still should be handling all those people, even if and I try to, I don't know if I'm always perfect with it, but it's gently and lovingly and great and patiently, and helping them to see or to find the place that God wants them to be as best as we can.
I appreciate that vulnerability of owning that piece of I'm not always that, because when somebody does come to us with a preference or just a difference of opinion about stuff, it's easy for us because we invest so much of our life into the church. I mean, how many of us have woken up in the middle of the night dreaming about something at church? Maybe it's a nightmare, but something at church in the middle of the night. This is our life. It's not just our job. And so it's really hard for us to not take it personally and feel that as a sting. And so, but we've got to remember that, that might not be the trust breakdown in how they came to us, but the trust breakdown could come in my response. Because if
Mm.
I respond angry or hurt and insensitive, then really I'm just saying, I'm saying you're right. You can't trust me because this is how I'm going to respond when you don't trust me.
Yeah, and it goes back to the culture piece, I think, which I feel like both of you as leaders are really good at this within your own like staff, leading your own staff team, and then leading your congregations, of setting up the expectation for people so that they know going into it, this is the type of community that I would like to be a part of. This is the type of community that this is, so that I can tell, like, hey, do you think I would fit in here? Is this a place I can trust? And then that makes those types of minor conflicts a little bit easier to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, when you major on the things that are the essentials and then minor on the non-essentials, and creating those expectations clearly, I think, is really important.
I think that's a huge piece too. When I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, and Matt, you could chime in here in a second. I'm going to ask you about this, but I think about prevention and healing. There's a front end and a back end, and I was talking with some missionaries this week, and they were like, "Hey, we support them, and they're in Thailand, and they're involved in the sex trafficking scene over there and trying to prevent it." And they read a stat to me like we're only rescuing 1% of people that are in sex trafficking worldwide. But if we can get in there and educate them, we like have a 98% something like of keeping people from joining.
Wow.
Ever starting. I'm like, well, then we better invest in the prevention, like if we're only rescuing one. And I think in this topic too, like, there's good energy that needs to be spent on helping people heal from this within our churches. But man, we better do a better job of preventing it in the upfront part. And that's where like culture has a lot to do with it. You want to talk a little bit about that, Matt? Just like, how have you worked on creating a safe space that prevents as much of this as you can?
Hey, Church Chat listeners, we want to tell you about a new learning cohort from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, one of our podcast sponsors that you won't want to miss. The Ethics of Life and Death is a 5-week flexible learning experience designed to help Christians and lay leaders think biblically and wisely about some of today's most pressing bioethical issues, like abortion, assisted suicide, infertility, and reproductive technologies. Led by Dr. Matthew Epinette, Executive Director of the Center for Bioethics and Human Dignity, this cohort will help you navigate the complexities of life and death with both clarity and compassion. Sessions run Thursdays from September 4th to October 2nd, and they're available live and on demand so that you can learn on your schedule. The cost is just $149 with early bird pricing through August 4th. You can head to learn.tiu.edu/cohorts to register. That's learn.tiu.edu/cohorts.
All right. So I think, the easy answers right up front are, some of the broken trust pieces that we saw repeated from people coming in from those church hurt situations were very practical things that could have been avoided just by being a little bit more intentional in areas like, either the church didn't have or didn't follow through on safety policies for kids. Like that in our world, that should be a no-brainer. If you don't have a solid, robust children's safety policy, like, pause this, don't even finish listening to the podcast and go get that going. Cameras all over the place for in your building. In financial systems, make sure that there's accountability on multiple levels so nobody's able to do anything there. But part of it too is like your volunteers are trusting you to manage their time well. And so you've got to be cautious of that, people being burnt out. Staff burnout is a key part of a healthy culture here. If you have when do you lose your chance to love your kids well the most? It's when you're tired and you're busy doing something else, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just exhausted, and then they come to you and they're like, "Dad, what about this?" And it's like, "I don't have time for that right now." And I blew it in that moment. And I think like if we don't manage our staff well, where they've got rest and they're not overburdened with responsibilities, then that's just creating situations where their response is probably going to be exhausted and aggravated more than loving and calm. So that's a piece of it. I mean, moral failures are unfortunately a reality where if you're in a lead position, the healthiest thing you can do for your staff is just keep pouring into them that they do this because they love Jesus, not because it's a paycheck or anything else. They still have to do that on their own. Like, they still have to have the right motive, but we can coach that as much as possible. But that's all the practical stuff. Then it gets down into like, all right, I've got to create this culture that is that's incredibly relationally friendly, where all of those practical issues. When we talk to people who've had breakdowns at other churches within those areas, it all started as a practical thing, but nobody talked about it as if it was just a church structure issue. It all ended very, very personally for them, and nobody talked about any of this with a dry eye. Because at the end of the day, there were trust issues and relational issues where they wanted the church to shepherd them, to be honest with them, to love them. And there was a breakdown at that level because the culture around those practical issues wasn't healthy enough to maintain or rebuild trust when the practical stuff broke down.
You got an example of that you can share without?
Well, that's what I'm trying to filter through. Quickly, practical example.
It could be made up.
Yeah. I'll give you one where one of our staff members, there was unfortunately, the practical breakdown of nobody enforced child safety policies. Everybody turned a little bit of a blind eye towards somebody because they were prominent in the church, and unfortunately, there was abuse happening. And so that, like, there were not practical policies that were being put in place and being acted on well. But then underneath that was a culture where people couldn't go and be heard about their concerns. So the culture kind of shunned transparency and wanted to believe that it couldn't happen. And so you've got two issues. You've got the practical breakdown. We're not enforcing policies, but then there's a culture that says, just trust us and don't think about it and don't question it. That's not healthy. And so you've got to break them on two levels. And there you had a church that did, it wasn't one person hurt in the church. The whole church grieved for years as a result of that.
This wasn't your church. This is a staff member's previous experience.
I tried to avoid our direct church or any church I've been at.
Right. So just to be clear, if you've had Matt Saxinger at your church, he's not referring to you.
No.
Man, yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. I love the, pay attention to the practical part, but also, especially, man, I would imagine this is huge if you're stepping into a new church in a role. You got to pay attention to the practical breakdowns that could lead to people being hurt. But you also need to really have an attentive eye or ear towards the underlying cultural stuff that could really, add fuel to the fire of when those practical things kind of break down.
Yeah, and if you're starting out, I mean, this is your baby to grow. It's a great opportunity to be intentional from the beginning, and do everything you can to develop other relationships within your cohorts. To say, hey, can I look at 5 child safety policies, and then you take it and make it your own? Is like that's got to happen. Or your financial system of how you operate, and you make sure those things are running well, because those are the two most common ones, aside from people not feeling like they're being heard, that came up again and again, where they didn't manage money well or they didn't protect kids well.
How have you guys, obviously there's things that you and your team have done to create a church culture that is safe. I'm thinking through this in the lens of a marriage again, and in the realm of, if something happens between two people, obviously God wants restoration, but in some scenarios, like, the other person just is not safe, and that is not possible, unfortunately. And so it's best for separation in that realm. Sometimes it works out there's healing, you can go counseling, there's healing that can happen. Okay. And I'm sure that happens with people in their own churches. In a scenario where, hey, their church truly is not a safe place to be, and they need to part ways and maybe land at Susquehanna, that's, and I say this in a positive light, it's going to not have a positive connotation, but that's certainly a burden for you and your church and your congregation to have an influx of hurting people, like everybody's hurting. Okay. But like to have an influx of all of these people who have been hurt by the church, you know, there's lots of wounds. Wounds take time to heal, and that's hard. Are there like and again, systems sounds so like
non-personal, right?
But like, yeah, non-personal. But like,
but
are there
important.
things that yes, are there systems in place to help you guys receive these people and to be part of their healing journey, you know, moving forward?
Yeah. And so like our goal isn't to grow a church by adding broken people who are from other churches that aren't doing it right. Like it's always it's always sad when they come and we find out another church not doing things, and it's trying to be cautious what I say and don't say. So there's a couple different ways to answer this, and I think we'll focus on the people coming in. The first thing that you've got to realize is once you create a healthy culture, it tends to attract people who have been hurt. Some of them have been hurt because of their own way of handling things, right? So back to Josh.
That's good to acknowledge.
Yeah, you got to know that. Like you might be bringing all your baggage in, and so that whole like welcome class, like, you know, kind of share what your church experience has been. It's kind of like it's not only we want to help you heal, but it's also saying if whatever was unhealthy in you, that doesn't get to come here and live and grow here. And that's honestly from my own experience of leaving a church in a way where some of how I left was healthy and some of it was unhealthy. And I realized I've got to mature spiritually and grow through that. So there's that side of it. But when unhealthy people are coming and they're being healed, what tends to happen is they attract other people as well, because they found a safe place and they're very much ambassadors for this is a safe place. So you should come because you've been hurt. So that's like, it's been a good growth for that. But a couple of things that we try and do from a leadership perspective is we don't let anybody who's shown up from a church hurt experience serve in any capacity for the first 6 months. That's not like a stated written rule anywhere, but that's just all of our staff know that this is, if they've been hurt, they just need to heal. And we wouldn't allow them to become members right away. Now, like, we're not going to say like, you're not allowed to become members, but we probably just encourage them to take their time, because sometimes the right answer is for them to go back to where they were and resolve hurt there. And we've had that happen. That's been some really cool things that have happened as a result of that. I just met with somebody the other day, and they're traveling quite a distance because of the hurt that they felt. And they felt like they had some relationships here. And they were like, is it wrong to pass all these other churches? And our response was, let's just not even answer that question right now. Let's just get you healthy for 4 to 6 months and let this be a season where you can heal and be in an environment where people are going to behave in Christ-like ways. And then you can answer that question and maybe begin to look for a healthy church when you know what that looks like, because you've experienced it. Now that's what that always renews our accountability as leadership to make sure that we, for the next 6 months, are operating in healthy ways where somebody can be healed. But, you know, if you're in the situation where you're hurt and you've had your trust broken, right? The key marker for me, like if you're saying, if we go back to the marriage analogy, like how do we know that our marriage is beginning to be unhealthy? Like, well, have you gone on a date recently? Have you been able to have free conversation? There's a marker there, right, that we can give people to indicate that. If you don't feel like the church has been transparent over the issues that have broken your trust, then that would be something that would be a marker to me that, like, I don't know that I can feel trust. I don't know that I can extend trust again if there's a lack of transparency in everything that has brought me concern or brought me hurt through that. I think people are just tired of there being more to the story. If it's hidden and swept under the rug, like I'll give you an example from ours that, we can use it. It's not a big deal. We were victims of a check washing scam, which I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I hadn't seen that on like NCIS or Law and Order or whatever, but like, so people were going in our mailbox and they were stealing our checks and they were, washing them and reprinting their name on it, or a false name or whatever. And it wasn't just us. It was a number of businesses in the area. And it was like, I don't think like we needed to, like, there was, when you balance that, you're always, as a leader, you're like, I don't want it to make it look like we did something irresponsible on our end, But if you want people to trust you, that's usually the part that you've got to be clear and say, hey, we probably should have caught this, or we should have been aware, or we should have had a lock, or we should have done this or that. But just to be upfront and to be humble and own it, and be clear with your people and say, hey, unfortunately, we need, if you've given in the past 2 years, we need you to like go back and check to make sure that your checks were deposited here and not by some guy from some European country who decided to steal
Oh my
checks.
gosh.
What I love, what I heard in there, and especially when you're talking about the volunteer thing, is what we have defined as a cultural statement at our church, a value, is that people are second. Our two, we call them guide posts or guardrails or whatever, but one of them is, the first one is Jesus is center, and then the second one is people are second. And that's part of how we try to prevent some of this stuff, because if people are second, I'm not going to sacrifice volunteers on the altar of filling positions in a ministry. If people are second, I'm not going to, no matter, I'm sure there's plenty of churches out there listening that are desperate for volunteers, that volunteers are hard to get. And if people are second, I'm not going to take that wounded, worn out person, as desperate as I am to have somebody in the children's ministry or volunteering, wherever. I'm not going to, I got to set that aside and be like, what this person needs is rest. And I think when you have people second, you're also not going to, hedge on being transparent to protect the organization. You're going to go, the organization really doesn't need protecting. People do, and what people need is transparency. And I really think that's a huge thing today. People can understand when a decision doesn't go their way. Give them some credit. But what they sure would love is some transparency about why that decision, even if it's disagreeable to them. If I'm transparent, I go, hey, maybe I should have handled this better, or I could have done this different. This is how we ended up here, and we're not changing that decision because we feel that was right for whatever reason. But let me be transparent about the process without trying to defend myself or without trying to protect the organization. And I think when you do that, you're really respecting people, and that's putting them second. And and that can lead to a place where healthy conversations can come out of difficult circumstances that help people. You might not be able to get to it in time to prevent hurt, but you can definitely help people heal.
Yeah, I think of transparency as an investment strategy for trust. The more that I talk about the things that are difficult for me to talk about, the more likely people are to trust me and all the other things that I might have to deal with in the future. And then when that rocky situation comes up, it's kind of like we've built a legacy of transparency that people can rely on and say, well, we know the culture, even if it is a little bit unsettling for me in this individual situation. I know that they've always been upfront with us. And you can't rely on that, but it's an investment strategy where it's like, if this is largely about trust, and I want a healthy church that has longevity for the long run, then every time that I'm transparent, it's like putting into a bank for people to say, we can trust.
So what makes, maybe that's a little, we're kind of dancing around some of the stuff. What makes a church safe or unsafe?
All right. So I'll give you things that would make it unsafe, and then we can do flip side and what would make it safe then. So a church that would be, and so unsafe, that's a term that to me, I think hits home. It's a term that we've been using as a result of a conversation with, a woman who actually came to us, been hurting somewhere else, actually went to professional therapy and was diagnosed with PTSD over church hurt. This is it's that painful for people because it's such a relational thing. And, totally this woman is validated in everything that she felt and experienced. And so she came and was saying, how do I know if a church is safe, that I should extend trust? And so to me, looking down through this, some of the answers that I gave her, what would make a church unsafe would be, number one, a church that is unpredictable is unsafe. It's unpredictable, it's unsafe. And so the flip side of that is a church that knows its unique calling and personality. And I know that feels entirely disconnected from what we're talking about, but I think it's very connected. The more that a church is who it is, like, you know your people, you know what God's called you to be, and you're in touch with. I'm fully convinced that each church kind of has its own personality, and so when we know that, when we discover that, we know our people well, we know God well, and how He's leading in this context. It brings consistency and continuity to the identity of your church, and people can feel at home because there is that consistency. And that, it doesn't mean you don't change. There's a way that your church handles change and transition, and they know it, and they're not caught off guard. It's not something new all the time. That's different from your personality. And to go back to what you were saying earlier, Josh, like maybe they're just in the church that doesn't fit them. And maybe there's a church not far that is more in line with what they want. Maybe they want a church that's going to, preach a certain style of preaching from a certain version of scripture. And that's not your church, and that's okay. I think we've got to be free to say, like, this is who we are, in a way that's, loving and caring and considerate. But if you're stable in your personality identity as a church, then people know what's coming. And so you discover your church and who it is, and then very clearly articulate it and just live consistently within that. For us, Source of Grace, not drama. We're not going to be petty with our problems, and we're not going to gossip. It's just not who we are, and we're going to have tough conversations. And that's who we are as a church, and we're going to keep being that and keep fighting for that. So I think that's the first one, is like, you are consistent in who you are. And the second one is, it'd be unsafe if a church is always trying to cover things up. And the flip side of that is a church that values approachability and transparency is going to be key. Actually, we just had a church forum where we meet once or twice a year, not for a meeting, not to vote, just to be able to engage with our members about things that we wouldn't necessarily talk about from the pulpit. Like, we're not going to bring this up on Sunday morning, but here's what we're looking at for a driveway policy, or how we're going to restructure deacons. And at that meeting, our head elder was he probably said 50 times, we want you to come to us with your problems. And I was like, man, just slow down. We're gonna get every problem they could ever have. But to his credit, he's just going overboard to make sure that people know that there's a healthy path for communication. Because if healthy paths for communication aren't there, people are going to make their own unhealthy paths.
Yeah.
So if we don't want people to gossip about us, we've got to create a culture and a path for them to be able to talk to us, right? So that'd be the second one. And the third one would be, we can't, and I know this is so easy to do if you're growing, where if you have 5 people coming in the door, you don't really care about the one person going out the door, can easily be a mentality that slips in. And we can't move on from people easily. That's unsafe. We can't just, it's relational. If they leave us and they were here for a while, then it should hurt a little bit. We should grieve. We should mourn that, and it should matter to us. Not that we let it beat us up or kick us out of ministry, or it becomes everything for us. We just process it in a healthy way, where I wish they were coming here and growing with us.
Yeah, that's tough. Ugh. That's tough, because part of when people leave, I remember what that was like when a small church. It's definitely more of an impact. You almost have to pay attention to it more. You can't be as dismissive. But as you're growing, and if you're growing fast, it's kind of easy to be dismissive. And just full transparency, there's times where I just want to be like, well, you don't want us. It's fine. Don't let the door get you on the way out,
Yeah.
And that's not right either.
Yeah.
And, and there's a tough balance, because how do you want to be caring. You don't want to beat yourself up about it. You also can't spend so much energy chasing down people that are,
right,
heading out.
And that's the thing. There's not a set answer for every time. And you've really got to be clear, with God as far as what the right thing to do in that scenario is. But I know for me, like, there is that reality where somebody leaves. There's a part of me that wants to be defensive and be like, oh yeah, well, we didn't want you here anyway. Yeah, like that can exist in my heart as well. And we've got to be able to say that that's not healthy. um,
Yeah.
and so for us to be real and, you know, again, if I want people to trust me, I've got to, if something hurts, I just got to let it hurt.
Yeah, and there's that, like, yeah, almost something you have to just be aware of and remember. Like, hey, I just had somebody. I got an email from this woman I care deeply about, who's like, hey, and it had a ton of really good reasons. I definitely believe that God was moving her on to something else. And it's hard because you're like, yeah, I'm sad about it, and how do I appropriately communicate without making them feel bad, without chasing them down, because if God's moving them on, then He's moving them on. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I just think we can't have the business mentality that says, I got five more customers. What's it matter if one leaves? There's a reality where, okay, that may be the case, but I've got to look and say, did I do anything wrong here? Did we do anything wrong here that caused hurt in a way that was unhealthy? And then we should own that and do our best to make it right in the future.
Yeah.
It seems like there needs to be some sort of checks and balances there. And I'm glad that you mentioned elder boards in there, because it seems like you guys need to work in tandem, lead pastor, elder board, to check one another's power in all of that. How do you guys work together in that?
Yeah, I don't look at it like it's only my job to shape culture. Like, we as an elder board, we're culture shapers. We're all looking to create this, and we all know it's going to take time. Like, and it's going to be something that's going to be at times we're tired of doing and tired of saying, tired of having tough conversations, and tired of saying, if you have any concerns, come to us. And I think the big thing for us to all understand and be on the same page about is trying to, like, the whole topic of church hurt is going to be tiring no matter what. It's either tiring because we did what we should have done preventively, and we worked hard up front, or it's tiring because we didn't do it and we're always dealing with issues on the back end. So there's some degree of I am tired from doing work. Just, you want to be tired from doing work well. Like, I put the effort in and this was a good thing, and now I can rest and enjoy this a bit because this is a healthy thing that we created as a team. Or are we tired because not this again?
Yeah. So what would you say to an elder board, like, about church hurt?
Yeah, I would certainly coach them through the reality that not all church hurt is our responsibility, but we can't be afraid of it. We got to keep it's managing something, it's growing something. My son is he's big into the whole terrarium thing. I don't know if you've followed this trend on YouTube, but I know nothing. I know absolutely nothing about growing plants well. We have regularly plants that die on the front step of our church. It's like none of our staff can do this well. So, but he has this little ecosystem and environment that he cares for every day. It's the coolest thing that he takes his ownership, and he's checking every day to see if the humidity levels are right. He's managing, whether or not the bugs that keep things healthy have enough food. And so it's got to be something that is one of our primary focuses. What is the health of this church? Because the health is directly related to the longevity. What does it do? What does it matter if, and we've heard the story over and over again, you had a church that grew like crazy for 10 years, and then there was a moral failure. And then there was, a financial lapse where somebody was embezzling money, or then there was a issue with child safety. And so, look, it's always got to be a reality that until the moment that God says, Matt, you're done pastoring a church, having a healthy church has got to be on the forefront of what I do. And with the caveat of having a healthy church in a healthy way, because you could be a dictator and be like, no, we're a healthy church, but that obviously breaks down right away. So I would say it's the ecosystem that you are responsible to create, so that you prevent as much of it as possible. But then when it does show up, it's dealt with in the most healthy way possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that relationship of lead pastor and elder is kind of the foundation of building a healthy, like in a building the trust that you hope that your congregants have with you, because I think either party could, gosh, what's the phrase? Is it hamstring each other? What is it? It's when you, it's not hamstring, and that's going to bother me.
This is my favorite part of podcasts is when Emily is struggling and swimming for a word.
For a phrase.
You just let her work it out, right?
Yeah.
But it's some sort of like body part, and I can't remember. It's when you, we're going to go with hamstring, and hopefully people know what I'm talking about. When you cobble each other, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And then we talked about like child safety policy and financial system stuff, like make sure you get that. Honestly, before that is a healthy elder staff relationship. And if that's not healthy, like you got to start there, reach out to EFCA East. And if that's an issue, and if it's at that level where you need help, then be transparent and own it, because nothing else is going to be healthy until you get that right.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to say anything to an elder board or a pastor, it would be embrace transparency. It is not your enemy. You don't protect the organization. Let God deal with the organization however he wants to deal with it. Protect the people and elevate them, and even the people that are difficult, that you don't want to show love to or patience to, like the people that are causing you problems. Like, elevate those people. They're valuable to God. They're important. They're created in his image. For whatever reason, they've been entrusted to our care for a period of time. And even if that's not going to continue, they deserve the respect and care that we can provide for them.
Yeah. And if you value brand over transparency, you're still going to have church hurt. It's just going to show up in a much bigger way.
Yeah.
And you've spent so much effort into the branding that if you've been just, not transparent, then when it does come out, it comes out as big as your brand is. And so it ends up being detrimental in the long run.
Oh yeah. Here's my question to each of you, and I'll take a shot at it too, although I haven't thought of it. All right. Let's forget about pastors, elder boards, whatever. There's probably some people listening that are dealing with church hurt. They're listening because they're desperate to find somebody that'll be like, it's okay, like, what would you say to somebody who's listening that maybe has been significantly wrestling with some church hurt?
That's tough because I don't think there's one right answer to say. So I'm just going to pick from what I've said the most to people would be that the church is God's plan A to reach this world. Like, the problem is not with church. That's still the best way for the gospel to reach people and people to grow in Christ and become healthy and Christ-like in this world. That's the way to do it. And in my own life, I felt called into ministry, but I literally was like, God, I'll go into ministry, but I don't want to go into a church because I know what that's like. And God kept showing me that, no, the issue isn't with the church. It's how we do church and how we let it be unhealthy. So I'd say the problem is not with the church. The church is still the best way for God to do what he does in this world. The challenge is just to find a church that's real, that's not hiding anything, that's open about their imperfections, that is consistent with who they are. And as a result of that, you know that you can trust them.
Okay, Emily, what you got?
You were asking me that question.
I'm asking everybody, yeah.
Okay.
Your face right now. I'm sitting in front of you. I got a ton of church hurt. I'm just wounded right now. What do you got for me?
I think I would say don't give up, because yes, church hurt is real, and you do need to take some time to go to therapy, talk it out, get help. But I kind of like piggybacking on what Matt said. Like, the church is worth it. A healthy church is worth it. And I would hate for their view of Jesus to be torn down and stomped upon because of other people's dumbness. And so I would just say, don't give up.
I love that.
Don't forsake, Jesus because of that.
Yeah. I think I would say, I'm sorry, that totally sucks that this is a topic that we even have to talk about, and it's not God's design. as you guys both mentioned. And so I think I would just want to like give a hug out and be like, I'm really sorry, and we need to be better, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help create safe spaces in churches for people. And you guys don't know this, but I know the two people also on this podcast fairly well, and all three of us have been through significant, it's not stories that we're going to waste your time sharing, but significant church hurt. And so when I hear them say, like, this is the best still, even with the church hurt, this is God's design, and don't give up, and all those things, I know that those things are not said lightly, and that that they're truly felt and believed. And we're here after being through some tough stuff in churches, because we love Jesus, and we love people, and we love the church, even though there have been times where it has not deserved or earned that trust or love. The potential for what the church can be for individuals is an absolutely beautiful thing when we start taking it the direction God has designed it to go in, and when we start elevating Jesus in church and elevating people, and it can be such a beautiful thing, and so we're praying for you if you're going through church hurt. I'm just so sorry about that, and obviously you can reach out to the show, and so besides that, anybody else have anything to say? What's the cool way we end the show, Emily?
Well, we don't end it yet. We get to share what we're loving.
I'm an idiot.
No, you just jumping the gun.
Yeah. So okay, what do you guys love? What have you been loving right now?
All right. So just anything, not
legit anything.
All right. I'm like Josh is sitting over here, and I'm first of all, I'm offended at your Phillies hat because it's ugly. It's the worst logo in baseball.
You're welcome for Reese Hoskins.
Yes, and I'm a diehard Milwaukee Brewers fan, and I'm loving that they're just they're a super young team and tearing it up. And there's a small hope that we might win the World Series for the first time. So
I don't think it's small. I really have been loving what I've been. So despite your anger at me for being a Phillies fan, my son and I love the Brewers too. And we loved them before, not as much as the Phillies, but we're Brewers fans. We love their uniform. We love their setup. We love their stadium. By the way, best uniforms in Major League Baseball. And
Amen.
Emily is so bored right now.
I know. I'm actually gonna look it up.
Look it up. It's the best. Yeah.
And then you guys landed Reese in free agency, and Reese was beloved in Philadelphia. We love him, one of our favorite players. So we follow and actually are rooting for you guys, despite the anger you're throwing at me. If Philly doesn't win, we want the Brewers to take it all. And I think they got better than a small chance.
Nice.
So. I'm glad you're loving it, though. It's a fun season to be a Brewers fan. Really fun. Yeah, so what are you loving, Emily?
I love, it's a podcast episode. I'm sure most of our listeners have also heard of Carey Nieuwhof and his podcast. But he just recently had Sharon from Sharon Says So. She has her own podcast and a huge following on Instagram. She used to be a government teacher, and she was on his podcast talking about kind of the political climate in America, and it was so dang good. And I'm sure probably by the time this episode is aired, the election will have already happened, but all of the content will still be applicable. It is just such a phenomenal episode about unity and bipartisanship, and it's just very convicting. So very good.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's good.
I am loving...
do not say these conversations. Don't do it.
I wasn't going to say that.
Okay, just making sure.
I'm loving conversation. I'm just kidding.
Don't even.
So it's been a difficult year because we sent my oldest off to school up at Penn State and at University Park. She's doing great. So I don't know how many people know this. I think Matt knows this about me. I love fly pit fishing. I was a guide for a year, which is another story for another time. Used to do a ton of it. And out at Penn State, it was ranked by Flylord's Instagram account as like the third best fly fishing school in the country. So I have been going up Fridays. My bosses have said you need to take days off, because I won't. If left to my own device, I will not take days off. It's a terrible, terrible thing. Probably a topic that we should talk about in Church Chat. So I've been taking Fridays off and going up and not doing any work, or hardly. This last Friday worked. I go up and I show up early, and then I fish until she's done classes in this little sweet brown trout little stream.
Awesome.
And it's been really refreshing.
Do you catch and release? Is that what you
Always,
do?
yeah. I have not
okay.
killed a fish in a really long time. I mean, I don't. That's not a. I just want to catch them again, and they're beautiful, and so I just put them all back.
Love it.
Oh, the stream I'm fishing is catch and release only, though. It's like Thai. It's a really good stream, and I have it dialed in. So while everybody else is struggling to catch anything, I'm just,
It's such a good feeling when you're just catching everything, and the guy next to you is like, what in the world is he doing?
Yeah, it really is. That's probably our pride.
It is.
Very pastoral.
But I feel like it's okay to let it out on the trout stream.
Yeah, on the trout stream,
Sure.
I don't think people need to be second. Maybe fourth or fifth or something. Yeah, so it's one of those things where, like Matt, you'll appreciate this. So, I'm running real light. This is probably going to bore our listeners to death, but like 6X, real light trout.
Yeah.
Tackle on my fly rod. And then, so that stuff snaps, like you blow on it wrong, and it'll snap. And I ran 2 Fridays ago, I ran like a ton of fish off just 2 flies the entire time. I had it so dialed in, I didn't need to change flies, and I didn't snap anything off. Yep.
That's a sweet day.
That's a good day. Now that we thoroughly bored everybody. Well, thanks. You can cut that part, Emily. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening to this episode of Church Chat. It has been such a good conversation, man. Just lean into being transparent, and I love that whole, be an extension of grace, not drama. And we have such great potential within the church to do so much good, and the church has done so much good for so many people, and it's such a beautiful thing when it's working the way God has designed it to work, and when we're leading it the way He's called us to lead it. There's such incredible potential for help and to be an extension of God's love to hurting people. I'm just really excited to know that there are some awesome, healthy churches out there that are, paying attention to this and doing some good out there for all the stories we hear on social media. There's so many good stories too. And look forward to just our roles in helping to create healthier and healthier churches. Well, that's it for this episode of Church Chat. And we still do not have a fancy way to say goodbye. So I guess for now, until next time, we'll just say see you guys later.
Bye.
See ya.
The Church Chat podcast is for educational purposes only. We dive deep into important and sometimes sensitive conversations and topics about life in ministry. Please know that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely the views and the opinions of the guests and the hosts, and do not necessarily represent the organizations that we work for. Nor should our views or opinions be considered a full perspective of circumstances that may be mentioned in this podcast. Our perspectives are limited, and so will be this podcast. What we hope to do is have conversations and spark greater conversations that will lead leaders and their organizations towards greater health. The Church Chat podcast is edited by Emily Gardner and produced by Emily Gardner and Josh Ott. The Church Chat podcast is supported by EFCA East, an Eastern District of the Evangelical Free Church of America, covering 6 states. EFCA East helps leaders live well, lead well, and multiply, helping churches find new vitality and multiply transformational churches on the East Coast. The EFCA is multiplying transformational churches among all people. For more information, visit EFCAEast.com. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and can't wait to see you on the next Church Chat episode.